Welcome, everybody, to the show. I am your host, Craig Pasta Jardola, of course, along with my co-host, Fiorella Isabel. How you doing today? It is TruthWire Friday. It's a fantastic Friday. I was going to say Freaky Friday, fam, because of the music that Jayme was playing, but I knew that would make you roll your eyes and saying, stop it, Pasta. Stop it, Pasta. It's not Freaky Friday. It's just Friday. What is up, Robbie Burns? What is up, Troy? What is up, everybody? I've had a lot of coffee, but Jayme just got me amped with that music, and I am so excited to talk to you about the hearings, fam, because we have to take something from this whole situation, and we need you to be our silver lining expert on what we have to learn from these two fugazi people that just had hearings.
Well, first of all, I just want to say it is incredible to watch the majority of the anti-establishment, whatever you want to call, like the anti-establishment, anti-imperialist people, journalists, analysts, people online who very well know who Tulsi Gabbard is, who know who RFK is, and have literally completely forgotten, it seems, who they are and how they've been talking about both sides, out of both sides of their mouth consistently now for the last few months. And Tulsi, especially, her pivot, and you were a supporter of her policies and of her, of course, to a greater extent. And I've defended her many times, and I'm not going to deny that. And so have other people that we've worked with, like Nico and others. But we are able to understand when a politician does something wrong and really goes back on everything they ran on, and they have to be called out for it. And that happens more often than not, let's be real. But this was, I think, a very huge pivot. And I have seen very few people who actually supported Tulsi actually hold her accountable. And there are some, like Shauna Burley, who was one of her biggest supporters, literally one of her biggest supporters, even like to the level of being friends, has called her out every single time. Yep. But others have failed to do the same. And with RFK, the vaccine, his stance on the vaccine and against Operation Warpspeed, that's what really got him to where he is now. And he has pretty much thrown all that away to where people even justified his Zionism and pro-genocide stance because of the work he did with the vaccines. And yet he has pretty much done away with all of that in an effort to get a nomination. So we're going to discuss all of that right now.
You know that, fam, I come from an Italian gambling background, so I always like to set odds. And the bets that I would have lost was how many times that Tulsi said Snowden broke the law, versus RFK saying I'm pro-vaccine. Now I think that through Tulsi's attempt to kind of, sift through the bullshit, to play out of both sides of her mouths. Like, yeah, the point is, and this is, I think, once again, just searching for what we're taking from this, because I want to make sure, like, obviously next week on the radio, I want to talk about the hearings. But I think there's a bigger picture here, because, the argument from a lot of people has been, and, when Matt, he plays devil's advocate, because I know off the air, even Jayme, when he plays devil's advocate, they kind of agree with me, right? Like, we're supposed to be pushing for change. You're not sent there to get a job, as far as I'm concerned. You're there to represent your constituents and what put you there and why the people supported you, because there was a movement of peace. There was a movement of accountability. There was a movement of not letting Big Pharma do what they want to do and get away with things. There was a movement of telling the military-industrial complex and the CIA that they have to stop with their regime change wars. That's why we supported these people. I never supported Tulsi per se. I supported the issues that she was one of the only Democrats to talk about. For the beginning of our career, our show, when we started, one of the first jokes I used to say, and even you joined in, Pasta's a civil liberties guy. Well, that's why a lot of us liked Tulsi Gabbard, because we believe she was out there fighting for our civil liberties. But when you see that hearing, she goes against everything she used to stand for, including one of the biggest things that put her on the map, the fact that she went to go see Assad and speak to him and see what was going on. And now her rhetoric just sounds of that, of like, very similar to John Bolton, for her to say, I have no love lost, that he's no longer ruling anymore. But you understand what's taking its place. Like, and I know, fam, that you have something to say too about Donald Trump now, and they're praising him. He's really going to take the troops out of Syria. Yeah, now that it's been couped, now that it's done, now that they, like he said, he doesn't need the United States troops now to steal the oil out of Syria and take it to Israel. He'll have Turkey do it. He'll have the Kurds do it. He'll have Israel do it for themselves. I mean, it's just like everything is turned upside down. But the whole thing about it is it's not okay, and nobody should stand behind. I think it's great that we're journalists and we get to defend the fourth estate, as you like to say. We don't have to play team sports. Our job is to hold the government accountable. That's what our job. That's why we're here, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're going to do at the TruthWire today. Enough said. Let's get into this, fam. Do you have anything else to say before we start rolling with the punches?
Go right ahead with RFK.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All those people we met at Defeat the Mandates in D.C., I'm sure they weren't happy with this. But no, unfortunately, the hero worshiping exists on all sides, fam, and they're going to stick up for them. Let's roll the tape there, Jayme CheeseSlice. What's the first one we got? This is Fee. Clip this up and put that out there. It's interesting because I put the Tulsi stuff out there. You put the RFK stuff out there. But let's roll the first one. CheeseSlice. Why isn't it up? Let's go. It's fantastic Friday. Guys, hit the like button, hit the share button. Get us out there. We're still demonetized. Still getting censored, right? Operation Warpspeed. Let's talk about it.
I do have a question for you on Project Warpspeed. We supported the CARES Act. We had 97 people in the U.S. Senate vote for it. Everybody here. There's only one member of Congress that voted against it, I believe. And Project Warpspeed had CDC, FDA, NIH, and BARDA very much in the mix. Now, some people think that you're going to come in here and insert yourself into those agencies in a way that's never been done before. Let's say that they're a part of a future Project Warpspeed. Is it your intent to go in and do something that's never been done before, based on my staff's research, and insert yourself in a discussion that the scientists are dealing with in those different agencies?
No, Senator. What I want to do is, I'm not a scientist. I want to empower scientists. I want to make sure that science is unobstructed by vested or economic interests.
That's good.
Or by bad culture. And I'll just say about Operation Warpspeed, it was an extraordinary accomplishment, demonstration of leadership by President Trump. When he promoted Operation Warpspeed, he was looking at all of the different remedies, including vaccines,
therapeutics, everything.
Therapeutic, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, famotidine, even chlorine dioxide. And he was not looking at shutting down our country for the year, forcing people to wear masks for a year, forcing all social distancing that did not have any scientific basis, which Dr. Fauci has now acknowledged. He said we took it out of thin air. But all of those changed during the Biden administration. And it became very narrowly focused. We ended up with the highest death count of any country in the world.
Okay, fam, there's so much to unpack there. I'm going to let you take the first stab at it because I can talk for fucking 10 minutes on this shit because it's so, I mean, wow. The playing of the team sports mentality is just so ridiculous to try to make this a Biden issue. All I'm going to say to you is that the way RFK is speaking about this, ladies and gentlemen, he thinks you're dumb. He thinks you're stupid. Right? He's manipulating you, and there are so many things that he's turned his back on. And that statement alone by that guy, the CARES Act, the CDC, not holding Trump accountable. Go ahead, fam. There's so many things in that statement right there that are so nefarious.
I'll be quick because I know you have a lot to say, but I almost want to ask you, Pasta, because I remember he was fully against Operation Warpspeed and Donald Trump's main thing behind Operation Warpspeed, because he's right. Donald Trump at least talked about hydroxychloroquine. He did at least mention other alternatives, but he never did anything with it. That was only brought up because his base was really questioning the protocol to the pandemic. If we all recall, they were the ones that were questioning. There was only a few of us on the left who got it from early on. And he basically, his whole Operation Warpspeed, the whole center point of it was pushing vaccinating everybody. That was the whole point of it. Being the president that was able to do that as quickly as possible. So in saying that Operation Warp Speed was an extraordinary accomplishment, he is debunking his own stance about vaccines and about how the entire thing was handled by Donald Trump and in general, just by the entire government in the majority of states. So he is doing it, Pasta, I think, more than because he thinks we're dumb. I think he's doing it because he wants to do whatever he can to get into this position. And he wants to, either because he wants the power for whatever reason or whatever X reason he may have. For me, the ends don't justify the means. They don't justify his Zionist stance. They don't justify his terrible foreign policy on other issues. They don't justify the way he was with vaccines didn't even justify that for me. But for some people, it did. They said, okay, at least he can come in and actually do something to make America healthy again, because he's at least interested in the food we're eating, the chemicals that are around us, which is a good thing. And I will say that is a good thing, right? But at the end of the day, with him saying this, he's pretty much throwing away the only reason why he was even anything remotely viable, why people even tolerated him, because now you're seeing he can already squiggle his way to try to get in there and try to make people believe that he's just, this guy that's going to do good by the establishment and also do good by the anti-establishment who put him there, which is impossible. When you try to please everybody, you're going to please nobody. And I feel like that's what it is here. He doesn't have the spine. He reminds me of others in Congress who don't have the spine to stand by their integrity, by what they stood for the entire time. And that's essentially what I see in him. I don't even think he's bad.
Some people will be getting phone calls, Sam, and let me see if I can just put this up really quick. See if how this works. No, that's not it. Where's the one where it goes right next to the face? That works right over there. So, fam, you don't have to brush your hair on camera like I just did. I hope it wasn't distracting, but I wanted to look good as I get this close up, because really, to tell you the truth, it is. I mean, the argument has been that this is what he has to say to get the job. It's once again, fam, it's the failed 4D chess theory again, where you start to say that, these people have to say these things to get in there so then they can push the policies that we put them there for. But that happens like never. Never. Yeah. Never once has somebody capitulated to the establishment, especially the congressional setting, because if you want things accomplished, you need these people to go along with you. So you might as well already bring it to the table and get shot down there. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm saying it for quite some time. He might get confirmed now, right? He's going to win. Sometimes when you win, you lose. And he's losing badly because, like he said, he's coming away from everything he stood for once before. And I'm going to be making some phone calls out there, a couple people who supported him, to see where they're at after this. People who we know, who we met and defeat the mandates in L.A., you weren't there. I was. We met people. Steve was with me. So we met people there. We've had many people on the morning show. We had many people on our show. Well, I'm very curious to see where Peter McCullough is on this, right? Dr. McCullough, one of our favorite people who's been on so many times. I must have spoken to Peter McCullough now, Dr. McCullough, almost close to a dozen times across different shows. I'd like to see where he stands on this, because this is a complete 180, as you said so. But sometimes when you lose, fam, you win. Had he stuck to his guns and been who he was, who had been the same author of the real Anthony Fauci, he would have exposed and blown up Congress even more, to the point where certain people would have been completely exposed, right? I mean, he played into Bernie's hands when we get there. When he says, oh, really, this onesie right here, now that you're pro-vaccine, because he said pro-vaccine so many times, which is such a false statement. The statement should have been, some vaccines serve a purpose, but the majority of the vaccine program is unnecessary. The thing that he said that really just went, I went, holy cow, was when he agreed with the vaccine schedule program for children. Like how it is now compared to 1984, where they come in and give you tons of shots. We've seen the guy speak on multiple videos and whatnot. Let's play one of these videos right now just to reinforce what we're saying. We showed you the tweet where he pushes against this. And the thing about it is the purpose why he was going there to represent so many people from the medical freedom movement was to make sure that Donald Trump got on track and hold, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
the people in the members accountable. Because everything he's saying right now, even though he tries to say, oh, he wasn't against lockdown and masks, but what you're saying right now is justifying lockdowns and masks. It's totally against what you said before. Let's take a look.
The COVID Operation Warp Speed was run not by HHS, but by the National Security Agency. Well, you know, if you look at the organizational charts, the Pentagon and National Security Agency ran the COVID response, not HHS. Why is that?
I mean, he's telling you that it was run by intelligence. Now he's saying it's an extraordinary accomplishment. You know, I mean,
So I just want to say real quick, you cannot justify that. He is literally contradicting himself. He's RFK Jr. versus RFK Jr. So everybody that's like, yeah, but he has to say it because he's gonna get confirmed that way, right? That's what everybody's saying. Oh, but he's gonna get confirmed that way, and him getting in would be better than anybody else getting in. I'm not denying that that's why he's doing it, but then what else is he gonna do it on? How do we know what he really stands for or what he doesn't stand for? If he does this, you can't do that. Like, you can't begin before they're even in office to justify these lies and the manipulations before they're in office. You hold them, right, their feet to the fire before they go into office. But we can't even do that because we're so, like, everybody is wishing for somebody to come in and do something and save them or do something that will help people. And I get it because it's been so awful the last few years, but you can't just say the opposite of your entire career and what your career has stood for and then go back. And this isn't the first time he's done that. I mean, he has been a Democrat or at least Democrat influence for a long time before he even went the Republican route. So there is a back and forth. There's all the Hillary Clinton support that he gave. There's all of these things about RFK Jr. that I pointed out a long time ago when people were supporting him and were giving excuses to support him. But now there's zero excuse. The guy is telling you he will say whatever he needs to stay in power. That's exactly what we don't need, even if he would be better than a lot of the other people that could potentially go for that. Y'all can promote it. Look, I hope he gets in. I hope Tulsi gets in, because I think then people might realize that nothing will actually change. And that's what I really hope happens, that they do get in.
Tweet of the week right there, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Safer thinking multi-billionaire puppets who serve the system are here to save us from their friends. It kind of gets a little black pillish, people say, but it's just the truth. I mean, what I want to say the silver lining is that we understand what's in front of us. We have one of the worst Congresses, and the mentality, the narrative is right there. It doesn't represent the will of the people. And I think that's a bigger issue than anything. By the way, too, fam, this right here, these were the shirts that were sold by the RFK campaign at the Libertarian Convention at their booth, right? Vote, just give us another shot. Trump versus Fauci. They were bagging on them, right? This is from the RFK campaign. And you know what I'm saying? Now it's a complete, and it's just, I know people are they're going along. Well, he's got to do this to get the job.
Yeah.
What do you say to people, fam, that say, okay, he had to give up on this issue here, but if he can get the processed food out of the kids' meals in schools, it's worth it. Because a lot of libertarians said that pissing and shitting all over the Fourth Amendment, your Fourth Amendment rights, throwing them out the window was worth getting Ross Ulbricht freed, right? I would disagree, even though I'm so happy for Ross. I met Ross's mom. He shouldn't have been in jail. He was throwing an example. He was in jail long enough. He just wanted a commuted sentence. But, I mean, he was even pardoned. But I don't think that was worth the price to pay to allow Zionists to have free range to continue. Which, by the way, we don't even have time to talk about the nonsense, the Johnny nonsense that's going on from the Trump administration. Nobody wants to talk about the ceasefire. I hope they didn't give him that peace prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, too quickly, fam. Because, right, you know, I mean, they're literally sniping Palestinian prisoners coming out of the prison going into the bus. I mean, it's just
They're
ridiculous.
still doing
Right.
it. And,
I mean, it's
yeah,
terrible.
and we're gonna get some footage from somebody on the ground. By the way, we have a person on the ground. But I just want to say, this is a moral question. This is an age-old moral question. Do the ends justify the means? Because where you stand on that basically tells you how you view this whole thing. He has to do whatever he can to get into office. So does Tulsi. So once they're in office, they're going to do good. As Pasta said, that never works out. I have yet to see any politician or anybody that tricks everybody, does a 5D chess move, goes in there and turns against everything that they just told everybody else for like the second time in a row and does something great. That doesn't happen. It changes you because by the time you get there, you're already changed yourself. So this is what we're talking about here. Like, if you believe that the ends justify the means, and you're going to believe that it's fine for him to do this as long as he gets in there. And for me, it's like, well, if he gets in there and he already did all of this and lied about all of this and flip-flopped and did all these things, then how is he going to have the power to push all of these policies that everybody is asking him to push? And then it also goes back to, do you believe that these people actually have power? Or do you believe that they're essentially representatives and faces of those that truly manipulate things? And that's essentially where I'm at. I think that they're chosen because they will be the proper people to push the envelope just enough, but not truly actually be actual opposition that endangers the system. They're going to perpetuate the system as it is. So for me, because I've always said this, guys, I'm not a reformist. I don't believe the United States is reformable. I believe there has to be something more that happens. And I'm not going to say the R word, but that's essentially what it is. Or you can call it whatever you want, but there has to be a change in the entire system at a point where it's fundamental change, where it's not just superficial change, right? Like the circle of politicians. And so for me, this doesn't do anything. And I also, Pasta, can we get to the healthcare thing?
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So is that one next, or do you have something else? Okay. Yeah. So let's go ahead and just watch the
Bernie Sanders is the healthcare.
The Bernie Sanders, the hotspot video, the Bernie Sanders interaction. Go ahead.
Me, that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Yes? No?
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Health care a human right? Is health care a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right, I would say it's different, because if with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool. Well, and so are you guaranteed the same right, or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry, I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here. All right, agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right.
Pasta.
Right, fam.
I will say something real quick. I wish Bernie Sanders had this energy when Donald Trump was not in office, when it was Joe Biden, his very good friend. I wish that Bernie Sanders talked about all of this, and he stopped. He became another asset of the Democratic Party. While I honestly don't think that RFK Jr. or Bernie Sanders are actually bad people. I don't get that vibe from them. But I think they lack the capacity to stand by their convictions, both of them, for different reasons. Bernie Sanders, of course, only fights when there's a Republican in office, and he's trying to go the anti-vaxxer route. He's trying to do this whole thing, right? And healthcare, it is my belief that healthcare is a human right. And of course, the RFK is coming in with the libertarian angle of like, well, somebody has to pay for it, right? This is what everybody says. But the problem is that even if you believe that, literally every other country in the world has it. Even capitalist countries like Russia, they have healthcare provided at an affordable way. Even if you don't have healthcare or don't have a job, the state provides it. This is a capitalist country. We're not talking about communist countries or socialist countries. We're talking about capitalist countries.
If we're going to make America healthy again, and a component doesn't involve something to do with making healthcare affordable, I don't buy that either. And I know that our government is completely inept. And after the whole vaccine fiasco, nobody trusts them, or a lot of people don't trust them to take care of people's health, which is why RFK would have been a good asset to that, because he would have been able to do that. But then again, you're also losing now anybody that could have said, all right, RFK, go in. He could have said, yes, but we have to work on how we go about that. He could have said, yes,
Yeah.
but
He
didn't.
missed the golden opportunity. He
Yeah.
missed the golden opportunity. Fam, ask me the question that Bernie asked to get us, Jayme, get us even. Ask me the question to, look at the big one. Wow, what happened there? Let me get my hair. Ask me the same question Bernie asked RFK, and I'm not going to do an RFK impression because I don't want to get criticized for making fun of a person like that. But ask me a question. Ask me the question.
Do you believe healthcare is a human right?
Human, fam. Say it again.
Pasta, human.
Okay. Senator Sanders, I almost did his invitation. Senator Sanders, I, like you, don't want to see anybody go bankrupt because of being underinsured or no insured whatsoever. I, like you, want to see people get the health care they need, especially our seniors. And we understand that getting to health care for all is a very divisive debate over here. But I say let's work together, me and you, Senator Sanders, to fix the problems on the front end. Let's get the processed food out of the children's school. Let's make sure that our children are getting decent meals. Let's protect them, Senator Sanders. And I look forward to working with you. I think that's an unfair question to ask. What is a universal health care program, right? However, I won't say essentially I believe it's a human right, but I believe that everybody, if we can help as many people as we can, we should. That's how you answer that question. And he didn't even take the libertarian point of view, fam. He took the Republican point of view, the individual responsibility with that person who smokes, who has cigarettes and stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was even more than the libertarian approach. It was about individual responsibility. And I like to point that out because they have that individual responsibility argument, but they don't want to have it when it comes to their country's foreign policy. Then all of a sudden they want to, they have amnesia right away. What are you talking about? What do you mean we're funding the jihads? Which kind of leads to the next topic of Tulsi Gabbard, who, when she says these Islamist jihads transitioning over there, she's leaving out the number one factor that those jihads that she's talking about are funded by the West, especially the United States, working with intelligence agencies as proxies against the other countries, the sovereign nations. That's what they are, and that always needs to be said. So Tulsi is full of shit, because that is what actually is providing the cover for the Zionist nation in that region to do what they have to do by saying what she says coming out of her mouth.
So let's go to Tulsi Gabbard, who basically gave half truths. And to start this segment off, we're going to start with Pasta Street, Jayme. But I have to say, Tulsi, as a performer in front of Congress, as a speaker, she did a really great job. If I'm looking at it from a PR perspective, if I'm looking at it from the perspective of how well did she say the things she needed to say to get those people that are already on her side to say, oh my God, she's amazing. Oh my God. And perhaps even people who kind of wanted her to say these things to reinforce the fact that at least she's better, or at least she's going to be a really great addition, the best we could have at this point to the Trump administration, because she has this sort of anti-establishment edge. It's not real, because we've told you she has flip-flopped from left to right, right to left, and all over the place into everything that she ran for. She ran on opposing wasteful regime change wars, opposing the surveillance state. She has maintained a quasi-surveillance focus, but not really, because it's bipartisan, meaning she only does it against the Democrats, but when it comes to the Republicans and holding them accountable, she's not doing that. And she's weaponizing all of this to a particular narrative and to a particular angle. So for me, that is actually extremely intelligent and extremely manipulative, which is why a lot of people say, well, she will be great, and I'm like, well, she could be more dangerous, because she's actually really good at doing this, guys. Do you not see that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. By the way, this is said by Friendly Brilliant. We're gonna get into this. Snowden told her to throw him under the bus to get confirmed. I get you, babe. But I mean to say, babe, I get you, girl. But you know what? Unfortunately, Snowden is not Tulsi's boss. There are other people who supported Tulsi, right, and got her to where we're at. Edward Snowden. It shouldn't be highlighted that he broke the law because, I mean, did he break the law? Whose law? The same law from the people who were trying to lie to the American people. You know, she spoke out of both sides of her mouth. And like I said, she said it over and over again. He broke the law. According to you, he broke the law, not according to the citizens of the United States. Everything that Edward Snowden did was justified. Just because it wasn't going along with the rules of the ruling class, that doesn't make it right. And she highlighted that way too much. Unfortunately, you know, Tulsi has other people she has to answer to, not just Snowden. Even though
It wasn't just Snowden.
The price. It's more about the actual act than Snowden himself, right?
And it wasn't just Snowden. She said a heap of other things that were like half truths and half not. Yeah.
Assad, Soleimani. I mean, she turned her back on Assad. She said that Assad gassed, when they asked if Assad gassed her people, she said yes. That was something that she made her bones on. That was one of the first things. You know how damaging that was right now at a time where there was a coup that nobody's talking about. What I'm about to talk about, the most top censored news going on right now is the fact that nobody's talking that the West, along with fucking Israel, along with Turkey, couped Syria. They took that land. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's even talking about it. So when she's saying that Assad is bad and repeating that rhetoric, the lie that he gassed his people, it's been debunked so many ways till Tuesday, right? When she repeats that lie, it's so damaging to what's going on there right now. And even though she tells that truth about who's running the show over there in Greater Syria, she said Soleimani. She justified the killing of Soleimani. Terrible. What are you talking about? That was an illegal. I mean, who are we, the United States, a mafia going around whacking people that we don't like? There's no diplomacy there. It's terrible. She backtracked on 702. They didn't talk about that in the hearing, but that goes against our Fourth Amendment rights. So when she's talking about our Fourth Amendment rights and she's already backtracked and said to the Senate Intelligence Committee behind closed doors that she's okay with 702, that's a lie because two things cannot be true. The 702 warrantless tapping and spying on citizens of the United States pisses and shits all over the Fourth Amendment. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. That's the only way I can say that eloquently so you understand it. Two things cannot exist. And let's play the first clip. Let's go. More stuff.
Last question. Who do you blame? Who's responsible for the war in Ukraine?
Putin started the war in Ukraine.
Thank you. Last
I
question.
mean, you can see her look in her face, and she's like lying. She said Putin started. The last part of the question, play it one more time. Who's responsible?
Who's responsible for the war in Ukraine?
Putin started the war in Ukraine.
Thank you.
She didn't even give us a biscuit, fam. She didn't even say that Putin started the war, but he started it because there was a color revolution coup pushed. We have the videotape, F the EU from Victoria Nuland handing out cookies on the Maidan. I mean, picking the next leader. We know this to be true. Ukraine on fire. She's flipped twice on that now. She was shitty on it in the very beginning when she didn't get the information. And we've seen this before, right? Like she was on TV saying this stuff about Ukraine. Remember when I asked her about China and Hong Kong? She wasn't up to date on it. She had to get educated on. When I asked her, she didn't know what was going on. I'm like, what about the NED on the advisory board for the Hong Kong Freedom and yada, yada, wipe your ass bullshit act they just passed in Congress? It has all NED members on that. She goes, I'm not aware of that. I mean, she didn't want to know. They used, what's her name? The girl who hated her used our video. Remember, fam? I didn't want to put it out there. I was so depressed. I'm like, she doesn't know about it. And you're like, fam, we're going to put it out.
Samira. It was Samira.
It was Samira Khan, right? Using that, like, here, she doesn't even know what's going on with the whole China situation. Like, she's had that on Ukraine before. Then she got right on Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now she gets wrong on it again.
Yeah. It's just funny because, like, it's so funny where politics has gone because now Samira, it's like, she's never liked Tulsi. I'll give her that. But there's this support for MAGA now, like from all these people. It's interesting
is
though,
crazy.
Pasta.
Yeah.
It is crazy because we've been here a while now, and we're like, oh, like so much shit has happened. But the thing with Tulsi is she could have said something more on that, and she has before. She has indicated, for example, that we shouldn't be sending funds to Ukraine, that we shouldn't be focused on all of that. Why didn't she do that? Why didn't she push that side more, that entire side of saying, okay, look, like Putin may have started the war, but look, we need to stop funding Ukraine because they obviously there are obviously other issues going there. Russia felt like there was an expansion of NATO, that there was an agreement that was violated. She could have talked about all of these things at a stupid level. She didn't even have to talk about the specifics. She could have just dumbed it down and made it seem like I'm hearing both sides like she used to. But she didn't do that because the whole thing is, of course, she wants to get inside. She wants to get appointed. Now, people are saying that's the only reason she's doing it. That's the only reason she threw, down Snowden so she could get in there. I don't buy that. And that tactic has never worked. It didn't work for RFK. It's not working. It's not going to work for her because even when she gets in, I think she will get in. And even if she does get in, I think it's just going to really go downhill from there because once again, she's flip-flopping so much. You don't know who she is anymore. You really don't know.
Yeah,
who's the real Tulsi?
They've talked about the psychological ops that she did in Africa, part of the regime change thing. Listen, one of the things, when you go back to the old Glory Jones days when we were there, and I asked her at a meeting, I'm like, what is Tulsi's biggest weakness? She was already weak when it came to regime change in Latin America.
Yeah.
Like we thought that she focused too much on the Middle East and didn't say, hey, listen, all these tactics have been played for years in Latin America, south of the border over here. You should take a look at them.
Remember Bolivia?
Bolivia,
remember Bolivia?
Yeah. I mean,
Venezuela.
She was the first to get Bolivia right of the Democratic, crew. And her statement was better than Bernie because Bernie said it is a coup, and so did Tulsi. This is the whole me, you, and Lauren Steiner asking all these candidates as a coup and watch them dance around it. But Tulsi, who wasn't even invited to that thing, or then I'm saying she had some knocking of the heads with the new chair at the moment. She never showed up there. But she would say it's a coup and the United States need not get involved. That was a big thing. And we were like, okay, there's some progress there in Latin America, but she's always lacked at it. Now she's going into a position where she's going to get confirmed, where I think where the CIA and the intelligence agencies are going to be spending extra extensive times. And you can see this by Donald Trump's pick of his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, right? The ultimate ultra anti-Zionist is now taking the helm as Secretary of State, right? So now they're going to play the little games. I can tell you in South Florida, in Florida alone, there are some of the worst anti-communist anti-Cubans, members of Congress that are here. Marco Rubio is a part of that whole group. So now she's going into a position where she was already weak and behind the eight ball, where she's going to be supposedly overseeing, I suspect, a lot of coup things, justifying of coups from her language yesterday, is going to take place over the next 4 years. I look at it as a very big negative, not a positive. And I want to play this next clip, fam, because we have to also focus on those members that you said, those people that the anti-imperialist leftists that are still kind of looking at the positives and looking at these attacks that are just unhinged. I don't know anybody that I know in my regular life that would kind of represent this guy's position this much, this far. Senator Bennett, let's play this because this is what they're using to glorify and justify what Tulsi Gabbard was doing. They're focusing on this.
Yeah. Are you aware that your comments about proxy wars and Russia's legitimate security concerns, to quote your own words, are in alignment with what the Russians have said to justify their invasion of Ukraine? Yes or
Senator,
no?
I don't pay attention to Russian
So
propaganda. My goal is to speak the truth,
the answer is no.
regardless of whether
Thank
you
you.
like it or not.
I'll take it. That's fine. You said you are used to speaking truth to power.
Yes.
Are you aware?
Okay, that just, and it gets crazier. He loses, he gets unhinged, especially in the Snowden part, which we can play going next. But I mean, fam, this is what they're using to justify. I mean, but the thing that really upset me is where's the Russian propaganda coming from? I mean, is it coming from Russia? You know, I don't know. I mean, that statement to me was very like weak.
It's more than weak. I mean, she's using their language, their dialogue to try to
Yeah.
to try to placate to them. And they're again, and I've said this to many people now. Tulsi Gabbard, they will never accept you. The establishment will not like you. Because she started out from an anti-establishment position, just like Bernie. She at least had that opportunity, and they will limit them, just like they've limited Bernie, just like they've limited RFK. Sure, okay, fine, they may get confirmed, but will they actually have the power? No, because they don't like them, because they know that they have some of these tendencies to say these certain things, and they don't even like that. This is why they don't even like Trump. Is Trump actually fully anti-establishment? No, but because they say the quiet part out loud sometimes, because they have a streak of seeming to be a bit of wild cards or saying this or that, they don't like them. So they're never going to like you. They're never going to accept you. You don't have to placate to them. People think that they have to act this way to get to power, and they don't. And every single one of them has made the same mistake. Bernie capitulated to the Democrats, to the centrists in his campaigns, especially the last one. And Tulsi Gabbard did the same thing with the right. So here we go. It hasn't worked, guys. Show me where it's worked. It's not worked, not once.
And I think that a lot of the times is that 80 to 90% of the people right now believe that we need a change within our government. Why are you capitulating to the government members that have a disapproval rate of 80% when it was the populace, when it was the people who put you in your position? We want the change in government. You're there to make a change. Like I said, you're not there to get a job. You're there to represent your constituents, and that's what they didn't do. Let's go into the Snowden stuff, fam, because I think it's really, really important, because one of the things that Jose Vega said on the show yesterday when Jose, it was the first time I disagreed with Jose and Diane Sara, and I told Diane Sara on her show, I'm like, no, we don't want Tulsi confirmed, right? We want somebody who we can trust, and she's going to go along, and there's too many things. And unfortunately, what we're not talking about is the fact that both of these people, RFK and Tulsi, and a lot of them have the same people who follow them, but whether they want to admit it or not, whether they want to make it a third rail or not, they're very loyal to the state of Israel. They're very loyal to the Zionists, and that's what we don't want more than anything. We want to reject it at all costs, because that's compromised. And if you're compromised, you'll fold on anything. So, I mean, the system is designed to give you some emotional wins so that you accept and go, and you're okay with the fuckery on the other part. But let's play this over here, because what Jose Vega said is, well, you'll see Bennett say, and we're not going to play 5 minutes. In fact, I wanted to bring this one as an example, because this is somebody who wasn't pushing her and Angus King, but yet she voluntarily said, Snowden broke the law. Snowden broke the law, right? Go to the next clip with Bennett, because going back to what Jose Vega said and a lot of other people said, it's like, well, yeah, but Bennett says they want you to say that Snowden was a traitor, and she didn't do that. She just said Snowden broke the law. And I want to know from you, fam, is there really that big of a difference there? I mean, I know, people are saying, yeah, it's a difference between saying he's a traitor, because he essentially said that what he approved was the people needed to see. But I mean, I don't know. There is a capitulation to say that they can do whatever they want to do to whistleblowers again, because she's justifying their narrative that he broke the law. Let's play.
Do you believe, as the chairman of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America?
Senator, if confirmed
This
as
is when the
Director of
rubber
National
hits the road.
Intelligence,
This is
I will work with you to make sure
this
that
is
there is
not
not
a
another
moment for
Snowden
social
like
media.
Jesus
It's
Christ.
not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer of this nation. As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve the intelligence agencies of the United States. Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has
Your
served
answer,
in
yes or
uniform,
no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
as someone who has
I'll go on
worn
to
our
my
uniform
questions.
in combat, I understand how critical our national security
Apparently
is.
you don't. Apparently you don't. Let me ask you. I've worked.
So she would go
Yeah.
on to say many times that he broke the law.
law.
He broke the law. I mean,
Right.
yeah, we probably should show it, but we don't have no time to do it. We have a lot of, we're going deep into the show. And she even kind of was starting to muzzle it out there, fam. As somebody who wore our uniform, we understand how important the intelligence needs to be kept. And he shouldn't have done what he did, is what she's trying to imply there.
Yeah.
But does
I
that make
think-
her, go ahead. Yeah.
I think this is why this Bennett himself makes Tulsi look like more of an anti-establishment candidate, more like somebody that's going to do something because of Bennett, because he's so awful, because he's so just absolutely terrible. And yeah, you're talking about somebody that does have the experience of working in a military psyop, right? Type of capacity. And for me, the fact that she didn't say that he was a traitor actually does signify a personal relationship that she has more than anything, because I do think that, for example, I think that she'd have a hard time saying that about anybody she knew personally. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard is a bad person, and I say that I've said this about Bernie and about RFK Jr. I really don't get the feeling that they are necessarily bad people. I think they are at times somebody like Tulsi might be a dangerous person because she's very, very good at manipulating narratives. And her saying that he broke the law, but not saying that he's a traitor, to me signifies that she is unwilling to fully throw him under the bus because she actually does have a genuine belief in what he did. Because I do think that side of it is real. However, do I think that she's going to stick by her principles and actually work in favor of peace when she's so hawkish on the Middle East, when she's so bad on foreign policy in Latin America, or hasn't paid attention or purposely has neglected it? No. So I don't think that just because of this good performance, and I will say her not saying that he was a traitor does mean something, because there's a difference, I think, to a small degree, that she didn't say that he was a traitor. Like, he broke the law. Yeah, you can break the law without betraying your country. Why? Well, because to her, he didn't betray people because he gave the American people information that they needed. They should have had access to. So that's the logical side saying, well, no, technically, he's not going to be a traitor if he's letting us know what we should know, and therefore that's why she's not calling him a traitor.
See, I look at that a little bit differently, and people might be surprised by this because I think this is role reversal here. I think that's the most nefarious thing to say. Like, no, I think they can eat a bag of dicks for saying that, the things they've said. And this is RFK and Tulsi, because they are, whether they're not personally a bad person with their feelings inside, they're going along and their intentions are to deceive and manipulate. Technically, in my mind, Snowden didn't break the law, because what he was doing was exposing a breaking of the law, deep to the core of spying on people about everything that the Constitution and our way of life is supposed to represent. So to me, her doing that, she is providing cover for who she's supposed to be overseeing to do whatever they want to do. The CIA, the FBI, you know what I'm saying? Remember, the CIA is not supposed to even be acting in the United States, and they have been for quite some time. And they have laws like COINTELPRO and those groups where they can actually kill people. So for me, for her saying that, she's actually providing cover. It slices deeper. Now, I do want to say this much. The next clip we have is from Hotspot. And I can tell that something was coming. I'm going to go back and I'm going to clip out Tulsi saying that she believes that Assad gassed her people, something that's been debunked for so long, something she's completely now flipped on. But we have a little clip where she already set the table in the beginning. And this is why, for me, it was like, I guess, I don't know, because maybe I was a little bit closer with the Tulsi campaign than I was with RFK. I mean, a lot of them were the same people that moved on over. It's the same mentality. But people like Shauna Burley and like us said, no, we're going to be about principles. And, enough is enough. There are still the same people who are okay with Tulsi, doing what she's doing and okay with RFK after yesterday. And it's really sad. Watch her set the table and the way she starts talking from the beginning of this hearing. Are you there, Jayme? Did he get up? He got up.
Yeah, I think he. Look,
All right, let's
he's
get to
coming.
the hotspot clip. The next one. This is her setting the table on going after Gaddafi, which once again, what we did in that whole situation, horrible, disgusting. Should never got
Yeah.
involved. And also with Assad. Take a look.
Yeah.
I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate Al-Qaeda. I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an Al-Qaeda offshoot, HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members.
Okay, so there's so much right there that's so freaking
Yeah.
awful because, well, first of all, I have no love for them. It's justifying regime change, which she's supposed to be against. That she knows that at the end of the day, I have no love for them because it was like the whole Assad is a brutal dictator. But no, what do you fucking talk about? What you're already lost when you say that comes out of your mouth. We have to be very clear about
Yeah,
this.
but a lot
Let
of people say
understand.
that, Costa.
Yeah.
A lot of people still say that to this
And-
day, and they still get accolades
Yeah.
for it. So if she says it, it's not going to be a big deal because at
Yeah.
least she's.
But
gotta
you've been
say
calling those
Assad is
people
a
out for
brutal
how long,
dictator.
fam? You've been calling them out from when it happened. Vanessa called them out when, I'm saying, when somebody said, when they repeat that shit, Assad is a brutal dictator, but no, you're already manufacturing consent for the deep state, for the intelligence apparatus to perform their regime change operations. I have no love for Gaddafi, so it was okay what happened to him. You're at
Right.
the end of the day, you're providing cover and then talking out the other side of your fucking mouth. Also, the Islamist extremist and talking about Hillary Clinton and Jake Sullivan is another attempt to make it a bipartisan situation. No,
Yeah.
right? I mean, to make it partisan when we know it's
Partisan.
bipartisan. Excuse me. I want to speak clearly. The right wing, the conservatives, the Republicans, when they're in office, they are for regime change. They are for interfering. They are for going at it too as well. Maybe even deeper in the paint than the left is. So no attempt to try to make this a Democrat versus Republican issue is going to work, Tulsi Gabbard. Sorry. And that's what she did there. I mean, there's so much nefarious shit going on. It's so easy for us to read because we've been in this game for quite some time because we've heard the speeches over and over again. But it's time for the people to understand. That's how fucked up your government is, that the people, the two people, right? These are the ones we were looking for. Some people were looking for Cash. I knew Cash was full of shit when he first came out because he's just full of shit. He's also another cuck to Israel at the end of the day. And I think we need to have some shows explaining how Israel is involved with our everyday policy, not just our foreign policy. But I mean, we see this shit coming, fam, and we see how nefarious it is. And that's what Tulsi did right there. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's nefarious because again, she's giving half truths, right? She's saying, look,
Providing cover.
look who's in power, HTS. She knows who these people are. I don't buy that she doesn't know a lot of these things because she's extremely well informed, more well informed than other Congress people that we've talked to, that we have seen, that are dumb as a box of rocks. Like, they're just dumb. She actually is well informed. So this is in a way more nefarious because she knows what she's doing, because she's using this to say, well, look, I don't like Assad and I don't like Gaddafi, who the United States, of course, could. But look who's in charge now, And then she's also, the jihadist aspect is more tailored towards Iran because she has been outspoken about thinking that these people are coming through our border, thinking that these people, and Johnny put it in this video, right? We have the next video where Johnny shared it on X, because that to me is my issue with her, that she's going to take as DNI director of national intelligence. She's going to have the ability to frame this narrative in a way where it manufactures consent for interventions and war. And these are the things she ran against. She ran against wasteful regime change wars, literally, because I've heard her speech so many times. Wasteful regime change wars. We have to stop, blah, 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 blah. This is what she ran on. And yet she is being put in a position to push that. And I just want to say the other thing, Pasta, about, the things, she's getting in this position. None of us would ever be in this position because we don't support the intelligence. So unfortunately, the intelligence position is not going to hire somebody that isn't pro-intelligence. So anybody that you get for intelligence is going to be, or at least have to show that they support the intelligence apparatus. For me, becoming one of them would be a betrayal to begin with, because I wouldn't want to do that. So we're stuck at the point where we're cheering, we're hoping one of the members of the intelligence apparatus that's causing all of the problems will actually do something for us. And I think maybe that is wishful thinking, but in a way that would need to happen. And I think it's possible, but I don't think it's something you should rely on. I don't think it's something that you should put all your hopes on, that somebody, because they're going to do what it takes to maintain that power. And she has the ambitions. It's clear. She's had the ambitions to become something, an elected official higher than in Congress. That was seen a long time ago. And she has gotten there through her actions of flipping back and forth. And I can't trust somebody like that. Ultimately, in spite of some of the good she has done and some of the unfair criticisms that she's had thrown at her, because they have been, just like Bennett has done towards her, there's been a lot more. And I've defended her against that. I don't trust her. And I don't trust any of these people, to be honest. None.
Can we at least then admit that the people that we thought were going to be part of the apparatus for the real change of what's going on, the outsider Donald Trump, when the people that we're saying, well, this is good because these people are going to affect, actual change to Donald Trump and the issues where, he's weak, at least let's just admit at this point that it's just business as usual. Let's play the next clip, by the way, and see more flip-flopping, the whole 9 yards.
Flip-flopping.
Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. So you get to lie. I mean, this will not shock you because you've seen it so much, but you get to lie about the loss of human life. You get caught and nothing happens to you. What kind of system is that?
I mean, this kind of accountability is critical. I want to point out first that anytime there are civilian casualties in war, it is tragic and terrible. Yeah. War is a terrible thing. And I think it's important for the American people to understand that Islamist jihadists are continuing to wage war against us. And the Islamist ideology, not the same as the religion of Islam, but this Islamist ideology, which is a political ideology that inspired the terrorist attacks on our country on 9/11, is the greatest threat that we're facing right now in this country and the world. It is the foundation of governance of so-called Islamic countries like Turkey and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And it's what's behind the discriminatory policies that they have in these countries against Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, and others. So as long as these Islamist jihadists are waging war against us, we have to work to defeat them militarily and ideologically. And militarily, we have two choices in how we do that. Number one, we can continue to invade and occupy and nation building countries around the world, just as we did in Afghanistan at great cost. Number two, we can take a targeted approach using airstrikes, using our special forces to go in and go after these terrorist cells. The reality is that the cost to the American people, the cost to our troops, the cost to civilians will be far less if we take this very targeted approach to go after these jihadist terrorist cells than if we continue making the very same mistakes that we saw in Afghanistan and other parts of the world of invasion, occupation, and nation building.
So in order to do that or to affect any successful military strategy, you have to have competent people running things. And doesn't competence require honesty and accountability? And that's what I see missing here. It's like you're not allowed to lie to the public, which employs you, are you?
Fam.
I put up Jayme's little comment there because that's what she should be saying, right? That's what she should. Here we go. How about that? How about that? Like, that's the main principle there. And when she said this shit, I remember watching that clip. That's when I was like, oh,
that was 2021.
I am completely done with you, lady. Go ahead, fam.
That was 2021. I just want to say, and this is before Israel's
D near her name, by the way.
genocide of Gaza. But Israel is already, every day attacking the West Bank. It was already doing all these things, and that's the thing. Like, are we denying that they're actual Wahhabist terrorists? Blah blah blah. No, they're literally toppled Syria, but with the orchestration of Erdogan, NATO, and the United States and Israel. Right? That's what they did because we orchestrated it. So the biggest threat to our national security is our national security in the Pentagon. But she can't say that. And because she wants to be in power in these positions. And nobody who wants to make it to government can actually say that and win in the current system that we have. Right? So again, I understand that. But what I'm saying is we're going at this the wrong way. The answers aren't going to come from within the problem itself. The answers have to come from outside of it. And I think people still don't grasp that concept yet. It's a little bit too far, I think, from where most are operating from. We're still kind of being retroactive. We're responding to the things happening to us. We're not taking a proactive approach as to how they're happening. And so I'm not surprised that Tulsi is at the position she is because she started doing this. She started flipping against everything she stood for. She stood against the wars. She stood against regime change. She stood against mass surveillance, and she has been making all these caveats. And so now here she is at a point where I think she will get inside because I think she's just enough there. And, there are some things that they don't like about her. But even if she does, I don't think much will change. And if she does it, it'll just serve to empower her as somebody that's far too radical when she actually isn't. And again, like Bernie Sanders and like RFK Jr., and these are people that serve to bring us back into the uniparty, the uniparty duopoly that we have. Because you think, well, maybe if we can just get one of them, something will change. Well, maybe if we can just get somebody like that, something will change. But that's just not how it works. It's impossible.
Fam, I just got to say this much just to finish up on that and get to the next one. It's the truth that Donald Trump is doing the same thing that Bernie Sanders did, and that sheep you heard you right back in to the two-party duopoly. So I know you want the truth.
The truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is the TruthWire, ladies and gentlemen. I am Craig Pasta-Jardula. Jayme, make sure we get a cup of that. I want the truth for the TruthWire. We are here. All the ways to help us out are down below. Click on over. We're gonna fire up the old school Patreon, change it on up, doctoring on up. We're gonna try to stick to Mondays and Fridays right now, around 12:30 Eastern time. Do the show, as you know. We have outlets. Fee will do other videos she has got going on and put those up on her channels. I'm gonna put my food stuff up on the Pasta to Go channel and any documentaries I make. I have my Wednesday show Drive Time, so there's other ways to help, get involved. We're going to be around doing that, but Mondays and Fridays, you're going to see me and fam. Every once in a while, Matt Weinglass will jump in on a nice Monday. Next Monday, I will be boots on the ground on the road, so Fee and Matt Weinglass will be around, but there's always ways. The Truth Couch, there's always ways to help us out. Thank you so much. We were talking about Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. I had enough talking about them. I don't.
Yeah, we need to move on because I have a little bit of time.
Appointments to go, and we don't want to mess with appointments. Okay, fam, take the lead on Blackhawk down because I'm still confused about what's going on. I think I'm leaning towards Jayme's theory about this being an accident. I would say, how can they not see those lights? Jayme had explained to me that those lights were on the same level when you looked at them. But I don't know. I mean, still glaring big plane lights on them. They couldn't see that shit. I don't know. But go ahead, fam, because this is still a mystery to me. And, I went looking to see some of the hearing. I wanted to hear what the mainstream media was going to say about the RFK hearing. And instead, they were covering this. So I didn't get that awful stuff. I didn't get a chance to bag on people on the right on Fox News for putting their nose up RFK's ass. And I didn't get to bag on people on CNN for their little sophomoric baby attacks, right? We didn't even go over the Elizabeth Warren. Yeah.
We have to get to this topic.
The Elizabeth Warren attacks. Wow.
They were pretty bad.
All right. Let's get to
yeah.
this. Get rolling. And I'm sorry. I had a lot of coffee, fam.
Yeah, I didn't have any today. So
Because you can't make coffee. You're terrible. I'm not there to make it for you.
I don't make it. Okay.
So
Let's just leave it at that.
what's the name of
okay,
the place
so-
you get your coffee at?
Stars Coffee?
That's the Starbucks that they took, right? They call it
But
Stars.
it's not Starbucks anymore, or I wouldn't be going to it. No, I make it we make it at home. So anyway,
Or you
so
do. Instant coffee.
guys, this is very weird. I just want to go over this quickly because I don't have too much time. But so you all know about the plane crash, right? With the Blackhawk helicopter that obviously belongs to the Department of Defense. So this American Airlines plane was with 60 passengers and 4 crew members, so 64 people total. And it collided midair with the Army Blackhawk helicopter that had 3 soldiers in it. And they were near the Reagan National Airport in DC. And the plane broke in half. They crashed, and both the plane and the helicopter landed on the Potomac River Wednesday night. And there have been 40 bodies recovered and only and no survivors as of now. Initially, they were saying there may be survivors, but no, only no survivors. Now, there were also US and Russian figure skaters, national champions, world national champions as well, that were coming from a camp at Wichita, Kansas. So there was people there. So all of that happened, and I posted it on X, and there are several videos, Jayme, I want you to play. Beside the first one that's there, you guys can see the moment of this crash. So let's watch this one, because there are several more that I've added that give an even more clear picture as to what happened.
You can see that. Look at it.
But it's the right here. Yeah.
It sucks.
Okay, so there's another one, right? But I want us to hear, Jayme, the air traffic controller on that thread. It's like a tweet thread. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth tweet thread where it says at least 12 bodies have been recovered with reports of survivors, but no actual numbers yet. That one. There is a video there that I want us to listen to, because it is a conversation between the traffic controllers attempting to reach the helicopter. So let's listen to that, and I want to hear your all's thoughts on that before we move on.
Did you see that? 472. American 3130, go around, turn left in 250, climb maintain 3000.
Okay, left in 350, 3000, American 3130.
Lucy 5347, go around, climb maintain 3000, flight
3000, heading, go around 3000, Blue Streak 5347.
Blackjack 3, can you return to base? What? Blackjack 3, proceed directly to Glebe. I need you to land. I need you to land immediately. Can you go to Dulles for a few minutes? Also 7, proceed due westbound, contact Dulles Tower 120.1. Muscle 13, can you go to Baltimore?
Okay, so that was interesting. There seemed to be some sort of interference there or something. There were times where you could hear multiple voices at one time. Now, the last video I want us to watch before we get into it is the next tweet, Jayme. It's the breaking new angles in this video footage of the Blackhawk now colliding with the airline's passenger. You see how very clearly the helicopter seems to make a beeline. Well, the airplane is traveling as well. In another video that I saw, the airplane seems to try to avoid it, but the helicopter, from what I've seen, seems to go straight for it. There was no attempt to stop. There seems to be no attempt at all. So this makes no sense. Now, there are reports that this helicopter has been remote controlled, because people were saying that there's 3 passengers there, so they would have seen it. And how could it not have been remote controlled? I have seen 0 news about that being remote control. There's been no confirmation of where it was. I've only seen that on social media and people saying, experts or pilots saying that they could be remote controlled because they are DoD and those can also be remote controlled. So, but again, that hasn't been confirmed. But I want you guys to see this video and see the how just straight on it seemed like they went straight like this. So let's take a look at that real quick.
These videos obtained exclusively by CNN show previously unseen angles of the collision between an American Airlines flight and a US Army Black Hawk helicopter. In the first video, the Black Hawk can be seen flying at speed over the Potomac from the left side of the screen. The American Airlines plane can be seen flying towards the airport before the two collide, causing a mid-air explosion and fall into the river. In the second video, you can see the Army helicopter and American Airlines plane travel toward each other. After the collision and subsequent explosion, the airliner can be seen spinning into the water, and the Black Hawk is also seen falling into the water. These videos obtained exclusively by CNN show previously unseen angles of the collision between an American...
That was it, guys. Yeah, I just want to get your take on that. For me, nothing is really making sense. It seems like at that angle, they would have seen each other. Jayme had a theory that he put out, but so far they really haven't said much
it wasn't
of anything.
Jayme's theory, right? So Jayme, who actually put that theory out that when they looked to you're saying that when they looked to the left, it would look like the same as the lights from DC as opposed to the lights coming from the.
Let me bring up a map here. I watched a video from somebody who's a former air traffic controller, and they were talking about this thing and explained it all. Had a good map. I like maps.
I mean, the thing is that really, to tell you the truth, I'm very suspicious about why that helicopter was there, but they say those helicopters fly there all the time, right?
Yeah. Okay. So this, I'm sorry, this is a little bit dark, but you can faintly see this. They overlaid this map over the air traffic controller's screen. So these like lines that are on the map, these big, thick, wide lines, and they have, say, like Route 4, Route 8, whatever. Those are the helicopter flight paths that are already established. Now, what you have is a path that follows like the eastern side of the Potomac River. Unfortunately, you can't see my mouse here. But there's a path that goes down the eastern side of the Potomac River that the helicopters are supposed to fly. When they're on that path, they're supposed to be at 200 feet. For some reason, this helicopter was at 300 feet. That we don't know why. And I think that's going to be part of the investigation. But what happened was, you see the blue dot there in the middle that says GIA 5342. That's the plane. The one above it, PAT 25. That is the helicopter. They're on a collision course because GA 5342 was supposed to be landing on the airstrip that runs north to south. It was supposed to come in on a southern entry on that one that's basically almost going up and down. You can see if you look and see the three landing strips there, it was supposed to land there, but for some reason the aircraft traffic controller wanted to divert it to the other landing strip, which is the top one that's at an angle, and that one is designated 3-3. Now, when it did that put this aircraft right in the direct line of the path for the helicopter.
For JAI,
it should have been safe because the helicopter is supposed to be at 200 feet, not 300 feet. Now, when the helicopter, the way I understood it from what this guy was saying, when the helicopter is flying at that height, they have a problem, or that altitude. They've got a problem where the lights from the city of Alexandria will mix in with the lights of the airplanes, and it's very difficult to tell the difference between what's an aircraft and what's a city light. And there are like optical illusions that will affect you. You've probably seen these before, where you can't tell what's moving and what's not moving. Like, am I moving or are they moving? If you've ever been on a bus or a plane or a bus or a train, and it's coming to a stop, or it's about to start, and you're not sure have you ever seen that, where you're not sure if you're moving or the thing you're looking at is moving.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
kind of the
Yeah.
same effect that's happening here.
Now, the
So-
question I have, though, really quickly, Jayme, we understand what you mean with those lights. We understand the patterns. Do these helicopters fly often in this area? Military helicopters
the
like
time.
fly. So it's
All
all
the
the
time.
time.
That's like, let's listen, 2 miles from my house. I watch them all the time from my window.
Okay.
There's helicopters, planes flying through there all the time.
So this is
Sometimes they
just a
fly right over my
situation-
house, and it's aggravating.
He was flying at 300 instead of 200.
Yeah.
Did
No,
we ever
200 instead of 3, right?
No, he's
was-
supposed to be at
3.
200, and he was flying at 300.
He was
Which put him
flying
in the
at
direct-
100 feet. Yeah.
which put him in the direct line of the approach for the plane as it was landing.
Okay.
Okay.
So the helicopter was higher than it was supposed to be, and the thing was the other thing they noted was the helicopter pilots were probably using night vision goggles, and what that does when you're in a city environment, you have to turn down the intensity because the night vision, when you see like a light, it blares like the sun, so they have to turn them down. When they turn them down, they lose their effectiveness, and also it creates a massive problem with depth perception. So there was another problem. The helicopter pilot and the pilot of the plane were not in direct conversation with each other, which is actually standard protocol. It wasn't, it's not nefarious, but if they were able to communicate, they probably would have been able to say something and do something about it. But it sounds to me like the aircraft traffic controller was doing everything by the book. The problem was the helicopter was too high.
Do we have the audio from the helicopter? Was anybody?
We do, but I don't have it queued up. I don't have.
Hey
it's
man, you're
making a
flying
video.
at 100 feet high, too higher. I mean, was there any of that?
I
would it
don't
be
know
air
if
traffic
that. I don't know
control
if that
related?
was actually talked about in the actual thing. But this is what like the analysts have pointed out after the fact. So, but the thing is, if you're flying at that height, the city lights absolutely will mix in with the lights of the plane. It's been a common problem a lot of pilots have complained about for years. But if you follow the protocol, you're flying at your altitude you're supposed to be, you should be fine.
Okay.
He wasn't.
All
So
right. That's
so
enough.
the other thing is the pilot was aware to look for an approaching plane to avoid a collision, but because of the way the lights blend, he might have been looking at the next plane that was on the approach for landing and tracking that instead of the one that was actually landing that he's supposed to be looking at, just because he couldn't see the lights and distinguish the plane's lights from the city. I mean, it's
Well,
very
the whole thing is
it's
that when
very
you see the
possible
way-
that this is just an accident.
Yeah,
and,
when
and
you
I'm
see
kind of
it-
leaning towards that at this point.
When you see it, you don't blame the pilot of the commercial airline for
No.
hitting the Blackhawk because it was just going on its approach. You blame the Blackhawk for coming into its area and hitting that. I do think it is just a tragic accident, and I mean, you know what I'm saying? I think that's enough conversation for this.
I'm not sure if it's been confirmed, but I've also heard that this was a training pilot. A pilot was still in training. Has that been confirmed? I've heard that.
the helicopter was in training. It was a training mission.
So this was a massive
Yeah.
mistake by a pilot in training. I
Well,
think
that's
this
what I'm
was
saying. Who's supposed to be in charge? And listen, they're going to try to blame DEI when it was once again they blame the DEI, and this is something I just want to end on this because we got to wrap this up. Jayme, thank you for coming on. But one of the things that we have to talk about is the fact that enough of the right, the conservatives blaming DEI on everything because they want to avoid the conversation of people from the boards of these corporations, from CEOs, cutting labor as a whole, and not spending enough money when it comes to safety and training and whatnot. I mean, even in the restaurant business, fam, training's almost out the window. You just show up and you learn on the job. That's what's going on. That's the main problem we have over here. Because of our system and the stock market, to increase profits, you have to cut, and nobody wants to have that conversation, especially on Capitol Hill.
Oh, absolutely. They just keep making cuts, and then you're going to get stuff like this happening every once in a while. And I really think this is a mistake on the Blackhawk. I think it was just an accident.
All right.
Well,
go away, D'Artagnan. You look good.
It's
I like
just weird.
The
He looks like Einstein, actually.
All right.
But
it's the green screen. It's because it's cutting off the bottom of my. I actually have more hair
you have
here.
on your face. Go get a washcloth and wash it off. Stop trying to look like me. I'm the one with the goatee. Get out of here, Jayme.
You're so mean to our engineer. Pasta's gonna have to have a talk with HR. Anyway, guys, that's all for now. And no, I still haven't come out with an outro. Just I keep thinking about it, guys. Give me your best outro. It's not gonna be truth out. It's not gonna be something lame like that. That I feel like that's lame. Like, I usually for my show I say something like deeper, but for this one, I don't know. It has to be a little bit more catchy or something. I don't know.
Well, we'll figure it out. I'm still trying to figure out what to say for drive time when I'm out there. I play some Wu-Tang when we're exiting, and we play old school hip hop, so I got to figure that out. But Monday, check it out. Fee will be here with Matt, the TruthWire. Wednesday, I have drive time. I'll be on probably on Matt's show on the Homeless Left on Thursday. Friday we'll be back, so we're going to start rocking those days, Mondays and Fridays for sure, around 12:30 Eastern. Thank you to CheeseSlice for coming on with giving us the extra information.
And I just want to say we didn't get to talk about Russia's deputy foreign minister meeting with the new unelected terrorist president Jolani of Syria. But if you guys have a chance, I'll probably talk about it on my own. But go check out my Substack, and also I did an interview with Vanessa all about it. So there's more and more information coming up on a lot of these things. So those require super deep dives. So if you have a listen on that, it talks about a lot of things.
Jayme, so don't go and end the show. Play the James Lee interview that we haven't played. We're going to play that next, guys. If you want to hang around, I did an interview with James Lee about TikTok and the ADL. Just play it at the end of the show, run it through, and we'll cut it up later on as well.
All right, guys, enjoy the interview, and we'll see you next time on TruthWire.
That doesn't sound good. I don't like that. Truth out.
Not truth out.
Yeah. Go to a quick break. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Craig Pasta Jarduli here. Listen, our next guest, you might have seen a lot of his videos out there. They've become really, really popular on Twitter, except they're getting censored on TikTok. And he's here to talk about actually all things TikTok. There was supposed to be a ban in place that lasted about 14 hours. And now everybody, once again, is praising Donald Trump. So to dig into this, not so much about the fact that it's not banned anymore, but what happened, what transpired for us to get to this point, and so that we understand what's going to happen if it happens again. I suspect Red Note, the new app that's out there, where it's a lot more, I think, impactful than TikTok because it's showing a lot of the Chinese culture and people are communicating with each other and in a way like never before. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage. Independent journalist Jayme Lee is here with us today. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Pasta, for having me on.
It's a pleasure. The pleasure's all on this side of the table, as they said in the movie Office Space. So, Jayme, you did this great report. One of your last videos out there. It was about a 7-minute video, but you went deep into why, the actual reasons in which TikTok was being banned. But the ban only lasted for 14 hours, I guess. And now everybody, just like the kind of, I call it the Fugazi ceasefire, because Israel never ceased to fire. They never will. It's just a pause. But a lot of conditions came out of that. They're praising Donald Trump for that. Now they're praising Donald Trump for this. Why don't you give us your insight to why you think the ban was lifted, and also go into a little bit about why exactly they proposed to ban it in the first place?
Yeah. There's a lot to uncover and unpack there. So I think we should probably start way back at the beginning, right? Because I've seen a lot of reaction from, especially from the Democrat or the lefty side of things, pointing out that Donald Trump was the first one to sign an executive order banning TikTok. And so I want to get into all of that and unpack sort of the whole progression of the last 5 years and how we got to today. I think because that's important, because I think now we're doing kind of partisan flame throwing. And so I just want to dispel all of that. So Trump in 2020 did pass an executive order banning TikTok, and that was due, he cited national security issues. Obviously nothing specific at the time, nor today. There's been nothing that has substantiated these claims, but he was talking about national security. Now, what's interesting about that, what transpired after that was, TikTok being the profit-making company that it is, tried to play ball with the United States, right? They said, okay, we hear your concerns about the data security. We are going to move all of our servers, all of the data that's in the United States or from the users of the United States into the US. And then that was something called Project Texas. And that essentially gave TikTok's, the operational aspect of the TikTok data to Oracle, actually. And so I think at that point, from the perspective of national security, that should have satisfied any kind of concern there, because they're basically saying, hey, we're going to house the data in the United States, and they could pass a law. They could have very strict enforcement of that, or high penalties. Say, hey, if you break this and data seeps out, or if the Communist Party, is caught taking the data, there's going to be very severe penalties for this. But I think after that, what's interesting that transpired is that once Biden took office, he actually revoked the executive order of Donald Trump, interestingly enough. So that TikTok issue kind of went away for a while in terms of the actual legislative actions. It was kind of just seeping in the background. But what was going on after that, this is around, I think, 2021, 2022 period, is that you started seeing these reports, these more academic research studies come out saying, hey, the content on TikTok is actually very dangerous for kids. It's brainwashing kids. It's causing them to do all kinds of dangerous activities. I don't know if you saw things like, the TikTok trends that they were partaking in. And it seemed like it was sort of an effort to malign TikTok. And then when you look into that, when I looked into that, it turned out it was actually Facebook or Meta that was paying some of these consultants and research firms to generate some of these studies about TikTok, painting it as kind of a malignant app that is, not good for social cohesion and things like that. And I would say, just to be fair, there's probably a lot of truth in that in terms of social media in general. So I think that some of the criticism levied on TikTok could actually apply to things like Instagram and YouTube as well, as far as like, hey, we don't want to be saying all this stuff. I mean, it's not good for teens.
Yeah.
There's been multiple studies, I think, across the board that this is bad for the mental health of teenagers, especially. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of there on that. But then the way they did it was it specifically targeted one app. And I think from that perspective, there's a competition aspect there of Meta wanting to, take out a competition using lawfare or using, a PR campaign.
Let's stay here real quickly and hold your thought, because I don't want you to lose the timeline. But this is really important, because there's these arguments that the Chinese Communist Party is using TikToks and their algorithm to somewhat hypnotize or to persuade people. And it's kind of funny, because I would always look at that. I would say that's hogwash. I said, yeah, there's AI, and I think the AI is used Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram to further capitalist gains. In other words, you start talking, man, James, I know my shower sucks. I got to get a new shower head. And then all of a sudden you start scrolling and a shower head comes and they start showing you the advertising. They did that. But from your studies, and this is very important, from what I see, the Chinese government and the Chinese culture, especially when we see Red Note nowadays, but China seems to lift up and praise and really give a lot of props to their engineers, their mathematicians. And the United States, our culture gives more praise and lifts up people like Kim Kardashian and sex figures and stuff. Have you seen anything nefarious in the way TikTok or any of these platforms use their algorithms in a facetious way that they can really go, hey man, the Chinese are really trying to pollute the minds of our young ones? Or is it more to do with just our damn society?
From my perspective, I think the algorithm reacts to the user. It shows the user what they want to see. And unfortunately, I kind of agree with some of the diagnosis that you have of the American culture, of what we prioritize or what we, idolatrize. So that, I think, is the algorithm reacting. There has been no evidence presented, and I haven't experienced any, in terms of the Chinese purposely, pushing videos that they would say would be bad for society or trying to infect the minds of Americans and things like that. I think the algorithm is purely trying to keep you on the app for longer, and it's going to show you the video that they think you would watch, and then watch the next one, and then the next one after that. Now, in terms of in China, that I have seen, the Chinese government is very active in monitoring what kinds of videos, let's say on Red Note or their Chinese version of TikTok, which is Douyin, the types of videos on there, they do monitor to say, hey, there's certain content that we don't want proliferating in China. And that's their prerogative to do so. It's their country. That's the government that they have. So, but I haven't seen that application in the United States. I haven't seen them say, or I haven't seen any evidence of them doing that nefariously. I think it's just because we watch the videos that we watch. That's kind of what my take on that is.
Yeah, I think it's America's addiction and whatnot. Well, let's continue on. The other question I had is briefly, when Donald Trump forced Oracle to grab all the data and take all that there, what was ByteDance's then position within TikTok? And also too as well, I want to make sure we don't skip ByteDance, James, because I think I saw Rand Paul yelling at Brian Kilmeade going, "You're repeating lies. ByteDance is not even owned by the Chinese government. It's owned by mostly Americans, a couple Chinese developers, and you guys are getting this all wrong." And then they also going on to say that the First Amendment doesn't grant you speech. It protects you from the government's removing speech and whatnot. So it's like, I think there's these kind of questions about what is ByteDance's role and where are they at now and who really actually owns them and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, so in terms of ByteDance, I don't have off the top of my head the exact figures of the shareholder breakdown, but from what I understand, and I know the clip that you're talking about with Rand Paul, and he's trying to lay out, hey, what does the shareholder structure look like? And a lot of it is multinational companies or investment groups, and one of them being Donald Trump's, I think, very good friend, Jeffrey Yaz, has significant ownership in ByteDance as well, which we can talk about later in terms of maybe some of the calculus behind Trump and why he wants to, quote unquote, save TikTok. But I think the important thing to understand as far as what the U.S., puts on ByteDance is that in terms of the way China works, no company is kind of above the Chinese Communist Party, unlike in the United States, right? If you're a corporation, let's say you're Amazon, you basically dictate what the lawmakers will do. Versus in China, it's kind of, no matter how rich you are or how powerful your company is, you are still beholden to the Communist Party. So if the Communist Party wants you to do something, you probably have to do it, or you may disappear, right? We've seen this happen to a number of Chinese billionaires. I think Jack Ma, he didn't technically, he's not gone, but he has been silenced to a large degree after he was kind of critical of certain things that Xi Jinping has said and done. I think one of them was related, some kind of very, I would say, benign feedback about COVID pandemic policies, lockdowns, things like that. And then all of a sudden he's kind of, all right, you're gone for a while. So I think that's something that we should understand about the Chinese.
In all fairness, Jack Ma was very tight with American interest and American business,
Sure.
and I think that a lot of people have this misconception that the Chinese government controls everything. Yeah, they're the final word, but they execute their bankers, and there's plenty of enterprise and free market going on in China. I'd say there's more free market going on in China than there is in the United States at this point. You know what I'm saying? All the restaurants, all the food in China, from what I understand. Of course, there's some corporations in there, but it's not owned over here like in the United States. The corporations own the majority of the restaurants, where the small mom and pop place is going away. Not to defend China, because I think that we do have this kind of mentality of these ideologues where you have the Trump administration and everybody around them. Oh my God, China's bad. A volcano erupted. Blame China. And as opposed to a lot of ideologues that, they can do no wrong, everything's lovey-dovey. And from what we've seen from Red Note is yeah, we don't like our government either, but you guys got a real big misconception about freedom over there. You ain't got no freedom. So I just kind of want to point that out there too as well. But please continue.
All right, so let's go back to what we were talking about with timeline. Yeah. So we're talking, I think we're in the stage of what I would characterize as a PR campaign against TikTok to sway the American public to say, hey, this app is a unique problem for American society. We should probably think about getting rid of it. Now, that was pretty much all going on just in the background. There wasn't a lot of legislative action. I know there was I think it was early March, a couple of people got together in the House to try to pass a TikTok ban. That didn't really go anywhere. This is March of 2020, I want to say 2023. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really until October 7th, where you started to see major movement in terms of really putting forward a clear path to ban TikTok. And I think a lot of your viewers probably know the context around October 7th, Israel launching their assault on Gaza, massive, civilian casualties, a lot of that being broadcast directly on TikTok. You had journalists in Gaza doing live streams, showing what the devastation was. And that was allowed to pretty much proliferate, I would say, for the maybe 3 to 4 weeks after October 7th. That was more or less just very prominent on the app. And I think it was prominent on the app not because the Chinese government was doing something specifically to push that content, but I think it was just in terms of the demographics of people using TikTok. That was an issue that they were familiar with before, and it very much went against maybe the conventional wisdom or what we thought of as the Middle East, and it provided users with a really different picture, which I thought was very compelling. And that was always be my argument, is that the pro-Palestine content was just much more compelling, and it resonated with the viewers a lot more than the pro-Israel content, which is because the pro-Israel content, we don't need TikTok to show it. The pro-Israel perspective has been fed to us for the last 70 years, right? We know that perspective, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think that content, because people would argue, well, why didn't that content do very well? Well, I think that's the algorithm, right? If you make content that people don't really like or they don't want to watch, it's not going to be recommended. But if you make a very compelling breakdown of what happened in Gaza, the history of Gaza, I've made a number of these types of videos, right, going back and looking at old archives of the New York Times and their progression to, the progression of colonizing Palestine. And there's literal articles that have this, from 1899. People didn't know about that, and that's just information that was new, and it was novel, and that's why I think that content took off. Now, there are very powerful groups, I would say, in the United States, around the world, that did not like this, because they're kind of losing control of the PR game, right? Because I think, from my perspective, I think you maybe would agree with this, Pasta, is that the Israeli state really relies on propaganda in order to facilitate their actions, right? If you look into anything that they do, it's based on propaganda, in terms of the messaging, right? As being the only democracy in the Middle East, or having the most moral army. These are all just talking points. But if you look at things, well, why would the most moral army in the world bomb, aid workers? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So that was a big problem. And there was a couple of major leaks that came out, right? So Jonathan Greenblatt, he is the head of the Anti-Defamation League in the US. So that's a supposed civil rights organization. I would call them more of a spy group, or a sort of kind of an extension of the Israeli intelligence, but based here in the United States. That's how I would characterize it. They probably wouldn't like that framing, but that's, I think, more truthful than civil rights organization, because they have actually done, if you look past, this is a little bit of an aside, but if you look into the history of the Anti-Defamation League, and I did a deep dive into this as well a few months ago, they've actually targeted many civil rights leaders for speaking out against apartheid. And if you think about it, it doesn't really make sense from a civil rights perspective why they would be punishing people and spying on people for speaking out. And this was in regards to South Africa apartheid. This is back in the 70s and 80s. And it doesn't make any sense. But then if you think about it from, hey, if they're a pro-Israel sort of watchdog or a pro-Israel propaganda group, that would kind of make sense, because if the South African apartheid falls, then maybe people will start paying attention to some of the apartheid-like policies in Israel. That's a slippery slope that they probably don't want to go down. So where was I? So at this point, there was that huge leak that came out. I think a lot of people have heard this audio of Jonathan Greenblatt talking to internal folks at the ADL about how TikTok is a unique problem and how this is something that they need to, quote unquote, take care of. And that really started a movement to say, okay, we're going to push through legislation. So they got a lot of people together. Actually, before I jump into the legislation part, there was an effort to actually try to work with TikTok, quote unquote, in a way. There was reporting done that I've seen that there was a group of, I would characterize maybe Jewish or Zionist tech executives meeting with TikTok. And there was maybe 40 of them that had a meeting with TikTok. And this was in November or December of 2023, I want to say.
Yeah.
And apparently what came out of that was they were not satisfied with TikTok's response. TikTok, I think, yes, the censorship was applied because, like I said, after the first 3 or 4 weeks, there was massive throttling of this kind of pro-Palestinian content, probably because of this meeting. But there wasn't necessarily a wholesale removal, or nor was there something in terms of, I think, the back end saying, hey, groups like the ADL can go in and access behind the scenes, which they can do for all of the other apps, right? This has been publicly stated by Greenblatt that he has researchers and data scientists working and embedded in Google and YouTube, Instagram, Meta, pretty much everything, including non-social media applications like Zoom, right? They also have ways to monitor what you're talking about in private meetings as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think TikTok necessarily gave them that access. So I think at that point, they started moving forward with the ban. They got together with
Yeah.
Mike Gallagher, who is now not in Congress. That's another funny story too. Later, he's not in Congress anymore, but he was the one that put forward the ban, the bill on the ban, and now he is actually but he works for Palantir now as their head of defense, which is really interesting. And Palantir has major involvement in the Israeli conflict with Gaza. They're supplying all kinds of data, analytics, and drones and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Not to mention all this spyware too, as well. And people don't understand that, like, look, I hate to make these, kind of comparisons, like who would you rather have, Donald Trump or, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, whatever it is. And I hate the fact that we should be arguing about the fact that we have to choose between these two, not arguing about who's better between the two. But one point I want to start on right now before we go any further with the ADL and Greenbot, and you did mention that the ADL, you characterize it as almost like a Zionist kind of like spy group of sorts, right? Would you say that that's a good way to say it? You've mentioned before that they have access or at least influence between all your other operating systems and platforms, including Zoom and whatnot. But they sat down to go meet with the people over at TikTok and really didn't get a lot of movement. And I want to focus 1 second really quickly, just so you can reiterate, and then we can continue to go on, is that you think a lot of this buzz and the problems of TikTok, where we saw the leaked statement from Greenblatt and the ADL says, we got to get ahead of this, we got to take care of this, we got to nip it in the butt, whatever he said, exact words. But he acknowledged the fact that this information is getting out there and it's making the Israeli government look bad, right? The propaganda that we had talked about, the most humane army in the world, James, they care about people. Yeah, they're going to use women and children, and kill them and say, oh, well, Hamas is using them as shields. But that doesn't really go with the kind of marketing in which you're telling us that you're humane and you're careful and whatnot. But the thing I want to talk about really quickly is that earlier in the show, I asked you about how sometimes these algorithms work and the fact that the Chinese kind of, idolize engineers and mathematicians, and we idolize Kim Kardashian and bad rap music. The algorithm lets you see what you're looking at. It knows and understands. So this information, these pictures, what we saw coming out of Gaza, it was the first time we actually saw it on an app on our phone. I mean, it's a different way in which media was operating, because media truth-telling. Are you saying that's what was the compelling part and why the algorithms in TikTok really continue to play that, share that? Is that's what the people were actually intrigued about? And also, could the Chinese government at the time done anything about that if they wanted to?
Well, I'm sure they could have done something, and they did do something about the algorithm after they got the feedback from very powerful Zionist groups to say, hey, we have to throttle this back because of misinformation or whatnot. The content creators that are reporting in this space did feel it. We all felt it, and we tried all different kinds of tactics to try to subvert the algorithm or the censorship by not using certain words and telling the story in a very I would say more of an obtuse way to go at the story and not and maybe using some of the negative space in the background to say, oh, take a look at this, not saying it out loud kind of thing, where we're putting up the green screen and things like that. But I would say in response to your question about the compelling nature of the content, I think TikTok in general has a more younger demographic than say an Instagram.
Yeah.
Where it's mostly more millennials and older, and TikTok is more of that Gen Z, Gen Alpha crowd. And I think this issue was just something that nobody really knew about that much, including myself, right? And being in this space, like I had started kind of paying attention to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict after I would say the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, the journalist, the Washington Post journalist. And that's when I started sensing, okay, there's something really interesting and weird going on here that we're not being told. But it was always kind of a story in the background. It's in the Middle East, kind of far away. But I think this event really brought things to the forefront as far as, hey, you're seeing literal people, arms are off and things, all kinds of things going on. And that's something that people haven't seen before. And I would characterize, like some people say, well, that stuff is all over X. Right, Twitter has all those videos as well. Why isn't Twitter getting shut down? And I would say because TikTok, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but there's many more, it's 170 million users, far higher than X. And there are more just kind of normie folks on TikTok that do consume content, but that's nothing to do with this, that the dancing or the cooking videos and all the other more, entertainment stuff. And then once in a while, you'll be shown this because a video will take off. Boom. Now you all of a sudden you see a woman, a child's head's blown off.
Yeah.
That's really jarring to see. And then as the viewer, you're like, what the hell is this? And then they might look into it. And then you'll be able to find and educate yourself there. And because I think as soon as you start to educate yourself in terms of the Israeli-Palestinian, conflict, some people don't even like to use that terminology, but if you look at this issue, the more you look into it, the more you realize, oh, what we've been told is not the truth. And there's much more to this story than Israel good, Palestine bad, or, Jews good, Muslims bad, this kind of framing. And that's kind of a dangerous place to be. And that's why I would argue why TikTok was important as far as getting this information out there, is just because they're just normal people on there, versus I think more X crowd is, I don't know if you would experience this, but I think that, or agree with this, but I think the X crowd is much more political already.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
There's
You don't have the
less,
same conversations on TikTok or Instagram, for that matter, that you do on Twitter. Obviously, when I meet somebody, I'm out and about, and hey, so you got any social media? And I'm talking to a lady. She's always giving me her Instagram account, and I'm giving her my Twitter. And it's just like, what are you into? I'm into politics. I'm into dancing. Okay, so I guess why we're into different spaces. But James, please forgive me, but I want to push a little bit on the one point, because I get accused of being a panda bear. I think, is that the terminology they call me when I'm too sympathetic to China, or I'm too friendly to China, and I think it's all roses. And that's just not the case. I'm always about individual responsibility and national sovereignty. Those are the two words that go hand in hand for me. And I'm always like, let China work out their problems. Let's work on ours, right? Like, we can't sit over here and point the finger at China if we're guilty of committing way more atrocities, especially when it comes to a military point of view. In fact, I know there's a lot of people who get very frustrated that China is dragging their feet and won't do anything militarily. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're a peaceful nation. And I think the last time they had a military conflict was in 73 or late 70s with Vietnam, if I'm correct. My history is pretty decent. But we did mention the fact that the Chinese government didn't do anything about the censorship or flagging of content. But yet we hear the I forget the name of the CEO, the Singaporean gentleman from TikTok. He always says, I'm Singaporean. I got nothing to do with the Chinese government. I don't have a passport. And, I mean, it was almost obnoxious when you hear, Senator Cotton, have you been part of the Chinese Communist country? No. You ever had a Chinese passport? I'm Singaporean, dude. What do you think, we're all alike? Jesus. But what could China have censored content on TikTok had they choose to beforehand? I mean, the Chinese government itself, could they have censored, you know what I'm saying? Because then there is something to the argument that a lot of these neocons on the right are making, that the Chinese Communist Party does have a governor of sorts on TikTok. Could they have done that if they wanted to?
Yeah, I actually said, so there's a clip of, so the video that I posted on Twitter is a segment of this more longer video that I put on YouTube. And in it, I did acknowledge that if you're talking about data privacy and these kinds of, backdoor access points, China, this is conjecture, but I believe that they do have access to it. Actually, I think they could. I think they could go to ByteDance or Show from TikTok and say, I need this data. Yeah. And I think they would give it to them. I don't know if there's no evidence that they've done that, right? That's the part that I think if the US government had evidence, they would have told us, right? They would have told the public, hey, they're taking the data right now. We have the proof of it. They don't have the proof of it. They can only say that they can do this, which I believe 100% true that they can do. And my response for that would be, well, unfortunately, Facebook, all these other companies have been capturing our data and then selling it to data brokers, and it's getting to the Chinese Communist Party regardless of this. So if we were really serious about protecting data privacy in the United States, we would limit or regulate or at least put some really strong safeguards around what kinds of data companies can collect at all about its users, right? Because people always point to TikTok, oh, they're collecting all the apps and they have access to all your photos and the keystrokes and all this other stuff they point out about TikTok. That's actually true for all of these social media apps. They can all do the same things, if not more. So that's the part where I, to respond. Yeah, I don't think the Chinese Communist Party is some kind of, a noble group of folks that are, altruistic and really just care about its citizens. No, they care about their own survival as well. And they have their agendas and things like that, as any government does. But I think we need to hold steadfast what are the American values that we believe in, right? People say, well, they don't allow our apps over there, so why should we allow theirs? And I say, well, because America is a free market, right? I don't think China says necessarily, even though their economy does act in a capitalist, free market sense in a lot of ways, that's not the foundations of the government. Whereas in the United States, we talk about this free market, so we talk about competition. One thing that isn't mentioned a lot in terms of this issue at all is why TikTok became so popular in the first place. It's because Silicon Valley had a monopoly over all these apps, and if anytime somebody tried to create a new app, it would either be purchased and then integrated into one of the apps, or they would try to kill it in some way. And so it was never allowed to proliferate. The innovation was never allowed to happen in the last decade or so in the United States because Meta or Google would just kill it. Whereas then China actually develops an algorithm that works even better, and which is why people like it. And so I think in the United States, our response should never be to ban something. We should be trying to outcompete, to create a better experience for people on your own app.
Talk about the crux of the issue over here. If we try to compete, listen, in the beginning, before October 7th, and a lot of people walked away from RFK, one of the things he was saying about China, he goes, I want to take them on economically. And I was like, all right, let's go. Because that's changing course of what we do. We take on people with our military. So instead of going in and saying, let's do business with a gun pointed at them or a tank, it's going in there, let's outwork them, let's outcompete them. So that means we would have to change so many things systemically in the United States, our education, our economy, you know what I'm saying? And to really compete with the Chinese, like this whole tariff argument, right? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of stuff coming out of that. I'm curious to what you think about that, because there are people who are for tariffs. I'm kind of, I think for certain things, there should be certain tariffs, but I don't know if it will necessarily work, but
Well, so very briefly on tariffs, and I'm not an expert in tariffs or anything like that, but I think my perspective is that, because Trump, I'm a firm believer in sort of the mandate, the public mandate, right? If he wins the election, he should be able to do what he wants to do and make a case for it. In terms of tariffs, what I come from is if the tariff is implemented for a specific goal, then we should probably do it. For example, if the goal is to say, well, we want to bring a certain sector of manufacturing back to the United States, let's say cars, right? If we don't want the cars being made in Mexico or Canada or China or wherever, and we want to bring it back to Detroit and Michigan, then okay, fine, do the tariff. Because the business is going to respond to the regulations at hand, right? A phrase or a saying that I love is, how we do business is how we do justice, right? They will respond to whatever the law is. So if you say, well, you got to produce here, they'll figure out a way to produce in the United States and make it make sense. But if the tariff is more so, well, I don't like your country, so I'm going to put a tariff on it, then that, I think, there could be an argument made that is actually just vindictive and it could hurt the American people, and it's not really to serve the economic interests of the country.
It's when you put tariffs and sanctions at the same time it's the sanctions. If we pull back from the sanctions, we have endless number of sanctions right now, several hundred sanctions on all these different countries, just simply because we don't like the way we do business. I think Gerald Celente has been saying a lot about it, and he was talking about, I think it was McKinley who was the tariff president. What do you want, higher wages or cheaper products? And I listen, Donald Trump tried this in his first term, right? It was specific things. I think it was like boat propeller engines or something. He was trying to target certain areas. And then the Chinese fired back, and they were also like, listen, we can just wait you out, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have other people there that have other interests that will eventually just drop these tariffs. You're not going to win. So it's going to be an interesting thing. He's already tried it, and it's going to be interesting moving forward. So let's get back to Gallagher and Greenblatt, because we're getting to that point, because this is an intriguing story. So we have the ADL getting in there. We have to kind of rein these people in. We have to settle them down. the TikTok people. Therefore, they are. What transpired from there to this bill that once died? Remember Donald Trump? He got it to go to Oracle. Okay, then all of a sudden TikTok's back on the map. They're doing their business now. We have the Biden administration. We got October 7th. This thing's going crazy. They got to silence this once and for all. I mean, you did make the argument, and I think a lot of people made that argument, but you really brought the receipts and the source material to prove it about this being about Israel, not being about China. What transpired from this point after the ADL set its sights on silencing TikTok?
Yeah, 100. I mean, 100%. I think we covered the Meta piece of the story because Meta has a certain financial incentive to get rid of TikTok. So that part was more of that soft power. There's some lobbying going on there. But then what got it across the finish line is definitely this consortium of, I would call them the kind of the Israeli lobby that includes groups like AIPAC and the ADL, as well as some folks from the military industrial complex that have a certain vested interest in continuing and proliferating this conflict. What I'm referring to specifically is Palantir. So if you just go down and even look at who wrote the law, right? So Gallagher proposed that law, but the person who wrote the law was a contractor for Palantir. So you have a military defense contractor in charge of writing a bill that would silence the criticism of a war that they're profiting off of. So there is an inherent conflict of interest.
This is the bill that Gallagher eventually brought to the floor, right?
Yes, this is that bill.
It's written by lobbyists.
Yes, HR 7521, I believe.
Jeez.
So not a lot of people know this, that it was written by a Palantir consultant. And it's interesting because the bill is really, supposedly to do with national security, but then you have the military industrial complex writing the bill, which is, doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth. But then, okay, so then that's one side of things. Then you have, basically people in Congress saying out loud, well, we don't know what they can't, because whenever they're asked about the actual national security issue, there's no evidence, right? They can't put forward any evidence. They just say, well, this is a massive propaganda machine that the Chinese have, and we can't allow this. But then they also kind of admit, people like Mitt Romney, other folks talk about how, well, TikTok, the Palestinian conflict on there, we don't really want that. So this is a huge reason why we banned it, right? That was explicitly stated with Tony Blinken why they wanted to get rid of the app. So that's another huge piece of evidence. And then you had in terms of the lobby side of things, you had multiple groups like the Jewish Federations of North America writing these memos to congressional members of Congress saying that, well, these are the reasons that we outline that we think why TikTok should be banned. And none of the reasons that they gave had anything to do with China or national security. It was all related to propaganda or misinformation in regards to the Israeli conflict, all these things. And so all this put together, it got the bill passed in the House, which was expected. Bills pass in the House all the time, because a lot of times I think bills pass in the House just as a gesture.
Can I ask you a question really quickly, just when we get into, did they give an example on how China could use the data against the American citizen? Or did they just kind of say they're collecting data? Or did they, because you also talked about how all these other platforms collect our data, even Zoom's looking into stuff. I don't know, but I feel a lot more nervous about people in the United States and my data ending up in Cambridge Analytica before I feel bad, more scared about some guy in Beijing understanding what pasta Jardula likes to eat and where he likes to do stuff. Did they give an example of how they can nefariously use this data against the American citizen?
It's funny that you asked that. There was a DOJ report that was put out that they said outlined all the risks and the examples, and then they would say, well, China is using the data in this way, and then the rest would be redacted. So they actually were not able to give the public any specific evidence of how they would use this data or how they've been using that data. It's very much just they could use the data if they wanted to use the data in the future to do something, right? Because what they do say is that, well, if you would introduce some nice videos about China, let's say there's some kind of touristy videos. The stuff that people are seeing on Red Note now, even more. But the stuff like, oh, grocery hauls or these kinds of things, well, the Americans would think, well, maybe China is a good country and this and that. So that's kind of what they're talking about. They're not necessarily saying, oh, there's anti, they're blocking certain content, because we've actually, a couple of friends and colleagues of mine that are TikTok creators, we tried several things. I made an anti-China video last year. And because I visited
Are you
China,
Chinese? What's your ethnicity? Just I know people are going to ask.
So in terms of ethnicity, I mean, Taiwanese, but I'm an American, but in terms of, family.
Ethnicity, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I only have to ask because you know what I'm saying. I know.
No, I'm a Chinese spy. No, I think that I get people to call
Everybody
me
thinks
Chinese spy.
Sagar's like hates China, and like I've done work with the Tulsi Gabbard crowd, so I've worked with a lot of Hindu people who can't stand China. So I just want to get it out there, just so there's no discrepancy.
I get accused of being a Chinese spy on the daily, on Twitter and X, and I'm fine with being called that. I mean, I think if China wanted to hire a spy, they should probably hire somebody who looks less.
I get the Russian spy. I just want my check from Putin. Where's my freaking check? If Xi Jinping's going to crack off a big check. But listen, I can tell you the difference is hearing Xi Jinping talk about Red Note and talk about the youth talking to each other is a lot different than our country where, oh, they're coming for you. The Chinese are under the bed. And what did Rubio say for his Secretary of State? Everything we do, China's going to have, a say on it. And instead of let's outwork them, let's do better. It's no, we have to demonize them and possibly use military force against them. It's just the conversations that are being taken place are a little bit different. I hope I didn't get us to lose that place because we were talking. This is so interesting. So now they have. You said there was a DOJ report that was out there, but so many things were retracted. The guy in Beijing can't just collect my data and say we're going to send huskies and stuff to distract Pasta so he doesn't do his work. They really didn't explain how they can use this information. Please continue on now because this is getting crazy that the Palantir lobbyist who wrote that bill that Gallagher brought to Congress. This is getting
then
crazy.
Immediately took a job right after that. He did not wait to the end of the term. He just
Gallagher.
Gallagher, yes. Gallagher basically was a hired mercenary to go in there and propose this bill, and then he took a nice, lofty job at Palantir. But to continue on, one thing I do want to say about the content on TikTok, right? Because we've tried to make anti-Chinese, like we purposely are. I'm going to make an anti-China video, and it did very well relative to the size of the account that I had. When I judge the videos going viral, it's like if the video is getting more reach than the number of subscribers. I think I had maybe around 100,000 at the time, and it blew up. It had maybe a couple 100,000 views. So I'm like, okay, so they're definitely not censoring this in regards to my audience. And then I had another friend, you probably know him, Ian Carroll. He made a video that was just like the greatest hits of anti-China content, Uyghurs, Muslims, concentration camps, all this stuff, Tiananmen Square. And that video got millions and millions of views. However, very interesting experiment that he did. And I remember this. He did that video twice. So it's the same exact video posted twice on TikTok. But one of them was he put the hashtag Free Palestine on there. And that version got massively throttled. So he put that same video twice. He posted it twice. One with the Free Palestine hashtag. And that video was throttled. The other one that had no hashtag, it took off.
Yeah.
Which was then that was like both a test on, okay, are they censoring anti-Chinese content? Also, are they censoring or pro-Palestine content? That was an interesting test. Yeah. So I would say that I think the skew, because this is another thing that I wanted to talk about, was there are academic studies out there saying how anti-Semitic TikTok is as well. That was another big push.
Yeah, we heard that
to get Congress people on board. And if you look into, so I looked into this study. So it's produced
17-minute video. Yeah,
yes.
Here we go. The Nikki Haley. Yeah, please.
Nikki Haley stuff, the anti-Semitic. And this was done by, I think it was called the Network Contagion Institute at Rutgers University. So if you look into this, it's basically another pro-Zionist organization that, pretends to be third-party unbiased. And I actually looked at the methodology in which they sort of designed the study, and it actually didn't even track the number of views a certain video got. in terms of like, oh, they're saying how much, if you see the graphs, like, oh, look how skewed all the videos are. There's no anti-China videos. There's no anti or pro-Israel video, this kind of thing. And all they did was they just do a search for, let's say, Tiananmen Square, or they'll do a search for Israel. They'll do a search for Gaza. And then they'll go in based on that search and categorize each video into their specific categories. But they didn't even look at how many views the video got. And secondly, that search bar, that's not really how people interact with TikTok. They don't go to the search bar and search for videos. It's a For You page. It's a recommended algorithm that they are swiping through. So to not factor that in, I don't think that was a rigorous study. And I think that was done with the result in mind, that they wanted to prove that TikTok was a certain way. And I think my hypothesis around that is, I just think that younger people have just had less time of indoctrination. I just don't think they're as anti-China as some of the older people, growing up. I don't think they see China necessarily as this great big threat. And the same with the Israel-Palestine issue. They've not been in that traditional media ecosystem as long. So they're naturally more prone to make these videos. There's just more people making that content, right? There's fewer anti-China videos, not because they're suppressing. It's just that there's not that many creators on there that are doing those types of videos.
Yeah.
And that wasn't taken in the methodology. However, they put this report out. It's picked up by all the mainstream media. It's picked up by, politicians. Nikki Haley was a big one, right, on the national debate stage, talking, outrageous claim how 30 minutes of TikTok makes you 17% more anti-Semitic. That's just sounds scientific.
You did also mention in your report about the fact that there is a big conflation. I think a lot of my audience will know this too as well.
Yes.
There's a big conflation between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. They're trying to make the same argument, but it clearly is not. So,
That's a big thing. I mean, that's a big debate, even within some of the more, between Zionists, right? The liberal Zionists versus the more hardcore Zionists, right? Whether or not criticism of Israel is considered anti-Semitism. Jonathan Greenblatt explicitly has stated that it is the same thing, right? Criticizing Israel is the same as criticizing Judaism. I don't understand that particularly, because if you apply that to any other situation, saying, oh, well, criticism of the United States is a criticism of, Christianity or Catholicism. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But hey, that's the battle that we're having, that we're going to continue to have going forward. But then in terms of back to the TikTok ban, so you have all these different factors coming in, and the bill passes the House, which I fully expected it to do. It passed in a very bipartisan way. However, the Senate, from all counts that I've researched and I've reported on, they were actually not so keen on rushing that bill through the Senate. It wasn't until they kind of put it in as into the package, the quote unquote humanitarian package, right, that gave billions of dollars to Israel, also Ukraine. It was kind of this,
and Taiwan. Don't leave Taiwan out of there, James.
Right, there was an Indo-Pacific. That's right. There was some money going to Taiwan as well. Which is another whole separate issue. I'm happy to come back and talk about that at some point.
Love to have you back and stuff.
Because I have some thoughts around, what the U.S. is doing in Taiwan, and also the response from the citizens there as well, which is interesting. But in terms of the TikTok issue, that bill, I don't think the Senate was too keen on passing the TikTok ban, because I think a lot of them probably understood that the backlash that now has now transpired from that bill. So they were saying, I think some of the folks in there were saying, hey, we're going to take a look at this. We're not supposed to do things super fast in the Senate. We're going to consider this and really think about it, have debates, things like that. But that never happened. It was just snuck into the humanitarian package, which is a deal where basically the Democrats, they wanted to pass the Ukraine package. I think the Republicans in general wanted to pass the Israel package. So then they got together and said, all right, well, you give us this, we'll give you that. And then we'll also sneak the TikTok ban in as well. And people, there's multiple congressmen. I think Cory Booker came out and said this. He said, oh, I wouldn't have voted for it if it hadn't been for the Ukraine package that we really needed to have, and this and that. Which is why I think we should, for as best we can, get rid of all of these weird things that are in bills that don't have anything to do with each other, right? There's no reason
Single
why.
line item bills.
Single line item bills.
Let's just do it.
Or at least in the same, if we're talking about aid, okay, let's pass an aid package in general. There could be different types of aid in that, but something about a TikTok ban should probably
you have
be
to
debatable.
define what aid is, and then we're gonna have to
true.
split up, Israel, Ukraine, all that. I mean, I'm for single line item bills. I mean, that's what Matt Gaetz had his little coup about, was the fact that we were lumping this stuff together because it provides cover, exactly what you just mentioned with Cori Bush. We got about 10 minutes left, James.
Okay.
So
let's wrap the story. Let's
but
get to the
I
finish
also
line.
where I want you to go with this is, once we wrap up what happened and everything and what transpired, what's the dangers of this happening again? Because I think that's the bigger picture right now, is the fact that they were willing to censor information from what we're marketed as the First Amendment, right? Which is what we're supposed, like you even said, the Chinese, they're kind of upfront. Yeah, we have our authoritarian ways. And you saw that on Red Note. It's like, but you guys think you're free and you're not. What's the dangers of this happening again once you wrap up what transpired here with this whole situation? I think the CEO of TikTok was there with Donald Trump today, and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, of course. And man, that guy's such a tool. Please go right ahead.
Yeah, so just to wrap up the whole TikTok, so we now know, so that passed very quickly within 1 month from start to finish, which is, I think, pretty unprecedented in terms of a ban of this size. And there was, people talking about how this wasn't really a ban and how it was more of a forced divestiture and this and that. All that is, I think, bullshit, more or less. It's like, how are you going to tell a company who developed a multi-billion-dollar, even trillion-dollar product to say, oh, you must sell or else? That's just, to me, that's un-American. It's undemocratic, not free market. It's just, I think it's not what the country should stand for. Now, in terms of what I see going forward, because of now we know, right? In the past week, huge backlash against the ban, right? Nobody wanted the ban. All the Americans were like, "Oh, you're going to do the TikTok ban and not do all the other stuff." Like, you get people bringing up, really good points, like, "Oh, you let the Chinese buy the farmland here in the United States, but they can't." But TikTok is the big problem. I think for the American public, they see the prioritization of Congress, right? They see, well, there's all these other issues that you haven't taken care of, but then you did this so quickly, and the only reason possible could be the censoring of speech, right? There's no other reason that people are buying. So people are not buying the whole national security thing because they have access. I'm sure you've told your audience about this, right? Now they're actively signing up for an app that is Chinese. It's in Mandarin. The app is in Mandarin. I mean, you can't even read the terms and conditions. Like, all the buttons are in Mandarin. You can't, and they're using it. So this is the biggest own goal from the U.S. government, that if in terms of a propaganda war type of own goal that I've seen. But in terms of going forward, what I see is, I don't think there's going to be efforts to kind of outright ban things. I think they've now learned they're going to have to do it in more subversive ways. And we're already seeing that right now on TikTok. I posted this yesterday I posted the same video that I posted on X on TikTok, and now it's taken down for shocking and what was it? It was a shocking and material, something like that, misinformation type of deal.
Do you think, James, that there was some type of, what's the word I'm looking for, capitulation from TikTok to go, okay, we'll
100%.
behave, and we're, what I'm saying, we won't do this anymore, and that's why they're back on. So you said 100%. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, 100. Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, because it's something they had already been doing. Like, every step of the way, TikTok has more or less tried to appease the U.S. government, right? They said, okay, fine, we'll move the data to the United States. After October 7th, they said, okay, fine, we'll put a throttle on some of these, pro-Palestine videos and things like that. And so now you have basically evidence, right? There's people tracking this. TikTok in the past year has hired a bunch of people from the national security state to work within their company as, content moderators and security guys and things of that nature. So they're now becoming fully embedded in what people would call the deep state, right? Things that Meta has done for years, and Google as well. And so that's kind of thing what you're saying is all right. So we're gonna, obviously most of the content, 90-95% of the content has nothing to do with national security. It doesn't really impact anything. It's just people's, entertainment style videos. But if we have creators, journalist type of folks who are trying to break news on there, it's going to be dramatically more difficult to do so now. And I'm already finding this. I have to kind of be very careful with what I say or don't say on the app, because I think one demonetization strike away from being taken out of their creator rewards program, which is how they pay us. So if you have 5 videos that are flagged for some kind of either misinformation or content community violation, then you're kicked out of the group and you can't make any more money. So similar, on X, we have this kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So now I have to kind of throttle back. Okay, so maybe I don't cover this or that. So that I think is what's going to happen going forward. And there's already evidence of people within TikTok, making deals. They're already trying to play the same game, right? They're hiring a bunch of lobbyists. So at some point, I mean, yeah, you talked about the inauguration today with Show being there. There's also Elon Musk. There is what was the guy from Google, Sundar Pichai.
Yeah.
Sam Altman's there. Everybody's there. I think there's going to be a deal that's worked out where there's some kind of divestiture. I think it would be more of a ceremonial divestiture because, like we talked about, a lot of the ownership is already not Chinese based. It's already multinational. So I think there's going to be some kind of, that would be my prediction, is some kind of sale. And then there's just going to be a move in of folks from the national security state to kind of more closely monitor what's being said on TikTok to align with, what's already been going on in the United States with Meta and Google.
I think the government of the United States wants TikTok to stay around as long as they can, like I said, put those governors on it, curtail some of their information. If the Zionist lobby is happy with they're not showing, most people waste their time on TikTok watching stupid shit. Whereas if you go to Red Note, you're going to see about some people's culture and what's going on, high-speed rail, and actual working, functioning economy. Not to say that it's all roses there and they don't have their own problems. But it's very, very interesting. James Lee, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you can come on soon again. There's a lot more things to talk about. Are you in LA where the fires are or no?
I'm not. I'm in San Diego.
Okay, so we met in the debates, the free and equal debates. So I thought maybe you were in that area. I'm glad you're safe. Let's hope that San Diego doesn't catch on fire. Let's hope there's some rain. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate
Thanks for coming on, man. And come on again. There's a lot more things to talk about. I love your work. Ladies and gentlemen, James, let everybody know where they can go and find you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can find me on pretty much all the major apps. Instagram, X, and TikTok is where I post more short form content between, I would say, 1 to 3 minutes at 5149-5149 James Lee spelled with an I. And then YouTube, I'm also on there, and that's where you'll see some more longer, 10, 15, 20 minute type of, documentary investigations into various topics. So same handle there as well, 5149 James Lee. Appreciate the follow and love to, chat with people in the comments and love getting, the most important thing that I care about is just having an open dialogue, right? I don't think any topic should be off limits for discussion. I think I learn from people all the time and I change my mind. And I think that's where we got to keep going is continuously decentralize the spread of information so we get more ideas out there so we can find the best one versus this kind of top down thing of deeming ideas to be dangerous and things like that. And we can't talk about it. And I don't think that's the direction that's going to serve us well.
Listen, the only way this thing's going to work is if they have open source systems where we can see their algorithms. What's going on Twitter right now is so nefarious. I mean, every day you see more evidence going out there. These people that Elon has lifted, and he's promoting, cheerleaders. The Tenet media scandal, where the money was coming out of Russian oligarchs, whoever was sending that money, they were sending it to cheerleaders. They weren't sending it to actual journalists, and that's the problem. You can't be partisan. You have to have an open mind. You have to question everything, and that's where we're at. We got a lot of things in front of us, a lot of barriers, a lot of hurdles to jump over. But James Lee, I look forward to having conversations with you and jumping over those hurdles next time you come back on the show. Thanks again, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Basta. Appreciate you.
All right, that's James Lee, everybody. We'll see you soon.